They barely noticed her when she walked into the selection bay. The room smelled of sweat, gun oil, and metal, the pungent, familiar scent of men preparing for war. Boots scuffed the concrete floor, echoing like drums of judgment. 5'2", lean and quiet, Emily Hartley carried a rucksack nearly as big as she was. Her uniform, pristine and neatly pressed, seemed almost absurd against the backdrop of massive, scarred Marines and Rangers who looked like walking barricades. A drill instructor's booming voice broke the hum of conversation. "Welcome to the selection program. Only the strong survive. Only the relentless get through." His eyes swept the room but paused on her. "Hartley, Emily Hartley, you sure you're in the right place?" "Yes, Staff Sergeant," she replied, her voice calm, steady. Not confident, calm. That distinction mattered. Confidence can be taught. Calm in chaos is rare. Whispers rippled through the room. "She's tiny. Looks like a kid. Did she get lost?" Some tried to hide it behind smirks, but eyes lingered longer than polite attention demanded. Emily didn't answer. She didn't look to the side. She adjusted the straps on her pack and stepped onto the line with deliberate, almost serene composure. Every other recruit's shoulders tensed as if sensing a challenge, though none knew they were about to meet it in a form they hadn't anticipated. The instructors began the briefing. Obstacle courses, ruck marches, marksmanship tests, survival exercises, every drill designed to break the body and test the mind, every drill designed to separate the strong from the weak. Emily's heart beat steady. Her mind wasn't preoccupied with proving them wrong. She wasn't even thinking about her size. She was thinking about why she was here. It wasn't pride. It wasn't ambition. It was a promise, a whisper of a vow made years ago. Her brother had been in the Marines, one of the best. He had been killed during an ambush overseas. Emily remembered the call, the hollow, trembling words of the officer, the silence that followed, the grief that threatened to drown her. She had promised then, "I will not be powerless. I will not sit and watch while others carry the fight alone." The instructors barked orders. First, a warm-up. Then, a speed test. Emily followed the pace without complaint. The taller men surged ahead, strides eating the floor. She matched them step for step, her breath controlled, body moving like a metronome. When the first obstacle, an 8-foot wall, arrived, the bigger recruits laughed as she approached. "You're joking, right?" one said. Emily didn't respond. She sprinted, jumped, hooked her hands over the top and hoisted herself up. For a second, time slowed. Every eye in the room followed her. She swung her legs over, landed lightly on the other side, and didn't even break her rhythm. Some of the giants froze, staring as she moved forward. Pride, disbelief, and envy mingled in their expressions. A few muttered under their breaths, "Impossible." The instructors noted her technique, grace under pressure, precision in movement, controlled breathing. This wasn't raw strength, it was skill honed through discipline. Next came the ruck march, 3 miles, loaded packs, uneven terrain. Emily fell into line, keeping pace with the tallest, strongest men. The mud was thick, sucking at boots, splattering every step. Branches snagged at uniforms. Blisters formed almost instantly. Sweat stung eyes. Voices began to rise in complaint. Emily didn't falter. Her legs burned, her lungs gasped, but she refused to let her pace waver. Around her, others stumbled, some dropped out, others muttered, struggling to keep up. But Emily pressed forward, step after step, foot after foot. Her mind focused on rhythm, on balance, on the promise she carried like a hidden weight heavier than any rucksack. Halfway through the march, one of the larger recruits slipped and fell into a ditch, cursing loudly. Emily slowed only slightly, extending a hand without breaking stride. "Grab it." The man hesitated, then took it. Together they rose and continued side by side. Even those who had mocked her earlier watched silently, realization dawning. She was more than her size. By the end of the march, Emily's uniform was soaked with sweat and mud. Her small frame bore the weight of a rucksack and a grueling terrain challenge, yet she stood upright while others staggered. The drill instructors exchanged looks, a mix of skepticism and grudging respect. They didn't know the half of it. Emily had a deeper test in mind, one she hadn't shared with anyone. The story of her brother, the fire in her veins, the fear she had transformed into resolve. She wasn't just here to survive. She was here to prove something no one could see from the outside. Heart and determination outweigh brute force. As she wiped mud from her face, she noticed the other recruits staring at her differently. Curiosity, unease, the first hints of respect, but she didn't look to meet their eyes. She was already thinking ahead to the next obstacle, the next drill, the next challenge that would push her further. The drill sergeant's whistle cut through the air. Next station, the hill, move. The hill was legendary. It had broken men before, stripped recruits of confidence, forced the strongest to quit. Emily glanced at it. The incline loomed, jagged rocks scattered across its surface, dust and dirt clinging to every slope. The men groaned, but Emily inhaled. This was what she had trained for in silence, in shadows, in the gym when no one watched. She stepped forward, quiet but unyielding, letting her legs find their rhythm. Mud squelched beneath her boots. Sweat dripped down her back. Her muscles burned, but she held steady, climbing with a pace that defied expectation. One by one, the taller recruits started to lag. Their strides slowed. Arms shook. Breathing became ragged. Emily noticed it, but she didn't gloat. She didn't need to. Every step she took felt like honoring her brother's memory, proving to herself that she could carry not only her own weight, but the weight of her grief, her anger, and her promise. At the summit, she stopped and looked back. The recruits who had mocked her were either collapsed, gasping, or staring in awe. She had reached the top without faltering. For a brief moment, the wind whipped around her, carrying the scent of mud, sweat, and determination. She closed her eyes and let herself savor it, but only briefly. She knew the tests had only begun. The drill instructor's voice cut through the wind, gruff and commanding. "Not bad, Hartley, but this is only the beginning. The real challenge starts tomorrow. The grind. Only the relentless survive that." Emily didn't respond. She only nodded, muscles tense, mind alert. Her eyes, small but sharp, scanned the horizon, taking in the terrain she would soon traverse. She felt a thrill, part fear, part anticipation. Tonight she would sleep little. Tomorrow she would push further. And everyone in that room, no, everyone watching, would soon learn something they had never expected. Being small didn't mean being weak. And Emily Hartley had a storm waiting to break loose. Her hands clenched into fists. Her body ached, but her mind was ready. She had stepped into the room unnoticed. She would leave it unforgettable. Dawn crept over the training grounds, painting the sky in streaks of pale gold and dusty gray. Emily's muscles screamed in protest from the previous day, yet she pushed herself out of the cot, tying her boots with mechanical precision. Every bruise, every ache, every blister was a reminder that she had started something no one had expected, but she wasn't done yet. Not by a long shot. The morning briefing was short but merciless. "Today," the instructor barked, "we separate the committed from the weak. Obstacle course, followed by live fire drills, endurance tests, and a ruck march in full combat gear. Only those who survive without complaint move on." His eyes swept the room, lingering a fraction too long on Emily. Some saw skepticism. She saw the spark of attention. The first challenge was deceptively simple. A narrow canyon lined with jagged rocks, mud, and water-filled pits. The recruits had to navigate it while maintaining balance and speed. Almost immediately, the bigger recruits' size became a liability. Their boots slipped on wet stones, arms flailed, and bodies collided with the terrain. Emily moved like a shadow, agile and deliberate. Her small frame allowed her to slip through spaces no one else could. Water splashed over her boots and up her legs, mud smearing her uniform. She didn't notice it. She only noticed the rhythm of her body, the grip of her hands, the alignment of every footfall. Halfway through the canyon, disaster struck. One of the larger recruits, a towering figure with arms like tree trunks, tripped on a slick rock. He crashed into Emily, sending both of them sprawling into a shallow pit of mud. Pain shot up her shin. A sharp sting told her she had cut herself on a jagged stone. Mud mixed with blood as she scrambled to her feet, ignoring the throbbing. Around her, the other recruits paused, either shocked or fearful. Some laughed nervously, others simply avoided looking. "You okay?" the man groaned, trying to pull himself out. Emily didn't respond. She clenched her teeth, wincing but steady. "Keep moving," she said, her voice calm, almost cold. She hoisted herself up, wiped her hands, and continued through the course. The man followed, still cursing under his breath. By the end of the canyon, blisters had formed on the recruits' hands and feet. Muscles ached, hearts pounded, and the smell of sweat and mud was almost suffocating. Emily's small cut had bled freely, soaking her sock, but she barely noticed. Pain was irrelevant. Endurance was everything. Next came the wall climb. 8-foot walls, rope ladders, monkey bars coated in slick mud. The giants assumed their size would make the climb trivial. Emily assumed nothing. She studied the wall, calculated her movements, and attacked it with precision. Hands gripping, feet finding tiny ledges, she hauled herself up without pause. From below, the others watched, jaws clenched, pride and frustration warring in their eyes. "She's faster than I thought," one muttered. "She's insane," another hissed. But Emily didn't hear them. She never did. Her focus was unbroken, her mind locked on the next step. The real challenge came after the obstacles. The instructors lined the recruits up for a ruck march 5 miles, fully loaded packs, uneven terrain, and no chance to rest. But there was a twist. Midway, the instructors would simulate an ambush, sudden enemy fire, a wounded comrade, and a requirement to move strategically under stress. Emily tightened her pack, feeling the weight settle against her back. It was heavy, unrelenting, but not impossible. Others groaned beside her, adjusting straps, muttering complaints, and doubting themselves. Emily ignored it. Every step would be deliberate, every movement calculated. As the march began, the pack dragged at her shoulders, her cut on the shin throbbing. She ignored the pain, focusing instead on rhythm. Left foot, right foot, breathe in, breathe out. The larger men surged ahead, overconfident in their size and speed, but the uneven ground soon punished them. Slips, stumbles, grunts of frustration. Emily passed them quietly, not gloating, just moving. Then the whistle blew, a sharp, piercing sound that froze every recruit in place. "Ambush! Casualty on the field!" the instructors shouted. Weapons mimicked enemy fire, and a medic ran toward a prone figure sprawled across the dirt. It was a staged casualty, but to Emily it might as well have been real. She had faced real death before, in nightmares and in memories. Every instinct in her body screamed to act. The recruits hesitated. They looked at each other, weighing risk versus instruction. Emily didn't hesitate. She sprinted toward the prone figure, eyes scanning the terrain, body moving with lethal efficiency. The casualty groaned as she reached him. Emily dropped into a crouch, assessed the situation, and barked orders to the nearest recruits. "Hold this line, cover me." Her voice carried authority, sharp and precise. Some obeyed, some didn't. She didn't have time to argue. She knelt beside the fallen Marine, checking for injuries. The scenario simulated a deep leg wound. The actor grunted as she applied a mock tourniquet, securing it with a practiced hand. Every move precise, controlled. The other recruits could only watch as she took charge, directing movement and holding the chaotic simulation together. "Let's move him," she shouted. Without waiting for help, she lifted the Marine, half her size, fully weighted by equipment, onto her shoulders. The mud clung to her boots. Her shoulders screamed in protest. Every muscle burned. Her small frame seemed ridiculous under the strain, but she moved. Step by step, inch by inch, she carried him forward while others faltered around her. For a moment, a hush fell over the group. Whispers turned to stunned silence. One recruit muttered, "She's actually doing it." The instructors exchanged looks. Some shook their heads in disbelief. None spoke. They wanted to see how far she would go, to witness what few had ever seen, a recruit whose size was irrelevant, whose heart and determination defined her. By the time she placed the Marine on the far edge of the course, sweat and mud mixed with the blood from her shin, creating a tableau of endurance, grit, and raw determination. Her small hands trembled from strain, but her eyes burned with a quiet fire. She had crossed the threshold. She had proven something, not to the recruits, not even to the instructors, but to herself. The other recruits approached slowly, some with shame, others with newfound respect. Mason, the tall recruit who had mocked her quietly, muttered, I can't believe you did that." Emily didn't reply. She simply adjusted her pack, wiped the mud from her cheek, and looked ahead. There were more challenges. There always were. This was only the beginning. The drill instructor's voice finally cut through the thick, tense air. "Hartley, you set a new standard today. Rest. Tomorrow the grind. Only the relentless survive that." Emily exhaled, muscles shaking, heart still racing. She had bled, she had struggled, she had carried more than anyone expected. And yet inside she knew something crucial. This test had only awakened her true potential. No one had believed she could do it. No one had expected her to endure. And no one had seen what came next. She walked toward the edge of the field, mud dripping from her boots, blood clinging to her leg, and felt the fire of determination roar inside her. She had survived the first real trial. She had become the first to bleed, but also the first to rise above it. The other recruits would remember her. The instructors would remember her. And in the quiet of her own mind, Emily made a silent vow. This is only the beginning. They will learn who I am. The sun rose mercilessly over the training grounds, baking the dirt and rocks that littered the infamous hill. It was a slope that had shattered reputations, broken egos, and ended dreams before they even began. Instructors called it the grinder. Only the relentless could survive its incline, its jagged edges, its unforgiving terrain. Emily Hartley stood at the base, her rucksack pressed tightly against her spine, boots coated in yesterday's mud, blood still staining the fabric of her sock. Her leg throbbed, a dull reminder of her cut from the canyon. The other recruits shifted uneasily behind her. Men who had towered over her only days ago now seemed hesitant, uncertain. "Next, the grinder," the drill instructor barked. His voice carried like thunder across the hill. "No breaks, no excuses. You stop, you quit. You fall, you fail. Move." The first few strides were deceptively easy, the incline gentle, almost inviting. But within seconds the ground became a mosaic of sharp rocks, loose gravel, and jagged roots. The bigger recruits stumbled, their size working against them. Each step required precision, balance, and grit. Emily's legs burned immediately, but she focused on rhythm. One foot, then the next, arms swinging in perfect counterbalance. Breath controlled, pain irrelevant. Every step was a statement. She would not yield. Halfway up the hill, a massive recruit, Mason, built like a fortress, began to falter. Sweat soaked his uniform. His boots slid on gravel. He dropped to his knees, swearing under his breath. "Come on," he groaned. "I can't." Emily slowed, glancing over her shoulder. Her chest heaved, legs trembling, but she moved toward him. "Grab my hand," she said, voice steady, commanding, without a trace of hesitation. He stared at her, disbelief etched across his face. She was half his size, and yet she held out a hand like an anchor. He hesitated, then took it. Emily didn't pull him up in one motion. She adjusted, planted her feet firmly, and together they pushed upward, step by painstaking step. The others watched in silence. Some were inspired. Some felt shame. The instructors, who had seen hundreds attempt the grinder, stopped shouting, letting the hill speak for itself. Pain flared along Emily's leg and back, a constant reminder that her body was tested beyond its normal limits. Her lungs burned, each breath a struggle, but she didn't falter. The mental game was as intense as the physical. Every thought whispered, "You're too small. You can't do this." Emily silenced them all with one steady mantra: "I will not quit." As they climbed, the wind kicked up dust and dirt, stinging eyes and choking lungs. Emily's uniform clung to her like a second skin, soaked through with sweat. The sun's heat pressed down, relentless and unforgiving. Yet step by step, she kept moving, dragging Mason alongside her. Near the ridge, a new challenge emerged, a narrow ledge carved into the hill barely wide enough for one boot. One misstep in a fall could mean injury, perhaps worse. Most recruits froze. Emily didn't hesitate. She edged along, toes gripping the soil, hands brushing the rocks for stability. Mason followed, trusting her guidance implicitly. At the top of the ridge, Emily paused just long enough to survey the scene. Her chest heaved, sweat and dirt streaking her face. Below her, the other recruits were struggling, some cursing, some collapsing in exhaustion. She realized something: size, brute strength, intimidation. None of it mattered here. Only resolve did, only the refusal to give up. Suddenly, an instructor sprinted toward them. "Emergency on the range." His voice cut through the wind, sharp and commanding. Emily's pulse quickened, muscles tensing instantly. This was no ordinary test. Something real was happening. She didn't hesitate. She grabbed Mason's arm. "Stay here, watch the flank." She sprinted down the ridge, every step calculated despite her fatigue. Her eyes locked on the small figure lying prone at the bottom, a Marine, injured in the middle of a drill simulation gone chaotic. Blood, or the simulation's equivalent, mattered little. The scene demanded action. Other recruits froze. Shock rooted them to the spot. Emily didn't wait for approval. She lowered herself, assessed the Marine, and barked orders with calm authority. "Get the stretcher. Cover our flanks, now." The chaos around her seemed to slow. She crouched beside the wounded Marine, hands moving with precision. Her small frame belied the force behind her movements. The instructor watching from above stopped mid-shout, recognizing instinct and efficiency when he saw it. Suddenly, Mason appeared beside her, steadying her from behind. "You don't need to do this alone," he panted. Emily shook her head. "He's not getting up unless I carry him. Step aside if you're afraid." The instructors exchanged glances. They had never seen anything like this. A woman, small, exhausted, yet unrelenting, taking command when others faltered. Emily lifted the Marine, a figure heavier than herself, onto her shoulders. Her arms trembled, sweat and dirt stinging her eyes. Each step was agony. Rocks bit into her boots. Her shoulders screamed. Yet she moved, guided by determination alone. Behind her, recruits watched silently. Murmurs began to ripple. "She's actually doing it. I didn't think it was possible." The instructor's voice boomed. "Hartley, keep moving, don't drop him." Emily gritted her teeth. Pain radiated down her spine, searing and merciless. She stumbled slightly but recovered, each movement deliberate, calculated. Every step she took was a refusal to quit, a rejection of the labels others had given her. The hill seemed endless, yet Emily advanced with relentless precision. Each footfall carried her closer to the aid station, and yet further into the hearts of those watching her. Mason, still recovering from the climb, followed beside her, offering support, silently acknowledging her grit. At the top of the hill, Emily set the Marine down briefly, catching her breath. Her small frame quivered under the weight of exhaustion, yet her eyes burned with unyielding fire. She had faced the grinder, not just survived but led. She had carried the fallen, and she had shattered expectations along the way. The other recruits, those who had mocked her, doubted her, ignored her, now watched in awe. They had learned something fundamental: courage, resolve, and heart could outweigh size and brute strength. Emily didn't pause to savor the victory. The drill instructor's next challenge awaited. She straightened, brushed mud from her uniform, and nodded to Mason. "Stay ready, this isn't over," she said quietly. The instructor's whistle cut through the air, signaling the next phase of training. Sweat, blood, and exhaustion clung to every recruit. Yet in that moment it was clear. Emily Hartley had claimed a new respect. She had set a standard. She had defied expectation, and she had done it while every muscle, every sinew, every fiber of her being screamed to stop. As she gazed down the hill, the sun glinting off rocks and mud, she whispered to herself, "This is only the beginning." She didn't yet know that the next trials would push her further than any hill, any obstacle, or any instructor could imagine. But one thing was certain. She had already changed the game, and no one would ever forget it. The emergency wasn't part of the training. A Marine had fallen, or so the instructor's shouting implied. Chaos rippled through the field like a shockwave. Recruits froze mid-step, unsure whether to run, help, or wait for orders. The sun blazed down, casting sharp shadows over the uneven terrain. Emily's muscles screamed from the previous climb up the grinder, her back still aching from hauling Mason. Yet as she saw the prone figure sprawled across the dirt, something inside her ignited. Instinct overrode fatigue. She sprinted down the slope, boots digging into mud and loose rocks, eyes locked on the Marine. Around her, others hesitated, whispering and gawking. Some looked to the instructors for direction. Others turned away, afraid. Emily didn't think, she acted. The Marine lay face down, his body twisted unnaturally. Blood, bright, real, and terrifying, soaked his uniform. The simulators could replicate most things, but the raw emotion of seeing a man's life hang in the balance couldn't be faked. Emily knelt beside him, hands steady, assessing injuries. The drill instructor barked from above. "You, the one in the lead, what's your assessment? Move him." Emily's voice cut through the chaos, calm but commanding. "Leg wound, heavy bleed. We need to get him to the aid station, now." No one moved. Fear and indecision had rooted the recruits. The Marine's groans grew weaker. She didn't wait. Her small hands gripped the Marine's arms, sliding them beneath him, shifting his weight onto her shoulders. The pack he wore added to the burden, but she lifted him, muscles trembling, heart hammering, and took a step forward. The instructors watched in disbelief. They had never seen anyone so small carry someone so heavy across uneven terrain. The larger recruits hung back, frozen by shock, and a sudden recognition that Emily Hartley was beyond extraordinary. Step by step she moved, each footfall precise, deliberate. The Marine's groans echoed in her ears. Sweat poured down her back, mixing with the blood staining her uniform. Her legs screamed in protest. Every muscle burned. Every nerve threatened to fail. A recruit whispered behind her, "She can't, there's no way." Emily ignored it. Every ounce of her being was focused on the Marine, the path ahead, and the promise she had made long ago: never let someone down if you can help. The terrain was unforgiving. Jagged rocks threatened to twist ankles, tree roots snagged at boots, and loose soil turned steps into potential falls. Emily adjusted constantly, balancing the Marine's weight with her own. Her vision blurred at the edges, but she didn't falter. Halfway across, her body began to waver. Her arms shook, threatening to give out. The Marine's breathing grew faint. Emily's mind screamed, "You can't stop now, not when a life depends on you." She gritted her teeth, dug deep, and pressed on. Pain and exhaustion were irrelevant. She had carried heavier burdens in her life: the memory of her brother, the judgment of those who thought her too small, the fear that she wasn't enough. Now all of it was fuel. From the edge of the field, Mason, who had climbed the grinder with her the previous day, started running toward her. "I'll help," he shouted, but Emily shook her head. "I've got this," she panted, not pausing. "Step back." Mason slowed, following beside her instead, ready to support if she faltered. She didn't want assistance, not yet. She wanted to prove to herself more than anyone that she could endure, that she could carry what seemed impossible. The instructor's whistles cut through the air, but Emily barely noticed. Time itself seemed to stretch, the distance to the aid station elongating with every step. She stumbled over a loose rock, nearly dropping the Marine, but her instincts kicked in. Hands adjusted, knees bent, back straightened. Forward motion resumed. By the 1-mile mark, her vision darkened at the edges. Blisters and cuts screamed in protest. Every joint in her body ached. Sweat ran into her eyes, stinging, blinding her. She wanted to collapse. She wanted to lay the Marine down and let someone else carry the burden. But she didn't. She whispered almost to herself, "Stay with me, almost there." The Marine groaned weakly. Emily gritted her teeth. Her arms trembled, her shoulders burned, her lungs begged for air, yet she refused to falter. 1 foot, then the next, inch by inch. Her mind sharpened with focus, every step counts. One misstep could cost him his life. Other recruits began to take notice. The ones who had laughed, mocked, and doubted her now fell silent. Some tried to follow. Others could only watch, mouths open, eyes wide, as Emily Hartley, the quiet, small recruit, moved like a force of nature across the battlefield simulation. Mason finally stepped closer, matching her pace, offering stability without taking over. "Almost there," he said quietly, sweat streaking his face. "You've got this." Emily nodded barely. Her body wanted to stop. Every fiber screamed surrender. But she remembered why she was here. Not for recognition, not for glory, for the Marine, for her brother, for the promise she had made in silence years ago. The final stretch approached, a narrow incline leading directly to the aid station. The Marine's weight pressed harder against her shoulders. She stumbled, knees buckling. Pain exploded up her back. She dropped slightly, sending the Marine sliding, but she caught him with a grunt. "You're okay," she whispered, "almost there." Every recruit around her held their breath. Some had tears in their eyes. Some were frozen in shock. The instructors, hardened by decades of training Marines, were stunned into silence. No one had ever seen anything like this. Finally, she crossed the final few feet, collapsing to the ground with the Marine still secured in her arms. Medics rushed forward, taking over. Emily lay there, chest heaving, body trembling violently from exhaustion. Sweat, blood, and mud coated her. The instructors approached cautiously, all replacing the scorn they had once carried. The lead instructor, face impassive but eyes wide, muttered under his breath, "Unbelievable." Mason knelt beside her, shaking his head. You did it. I can't believe you did it." Emily didn't respond immediately. She allowed herself a brief moment to breathe, to feel the weight of her triumph, and then quietly muttered, "He's alive. That's what matters." The drill instructor finally spoke, voice carrying authority and a new edge of respect. "Hartley, you've done what none of the others could. You didn't just survive, you carried another through impossible odds. Rest. Tomorrow we push even further. The real test is only beginning." As Emily was helped to her feet, limping and battered but unbroken, she caught sight of the other recruits. Some avoided her gaze. Some stared with admiration. She realized that her actions had already begun to change the dynamic among them. They had mocked her, doubted her, dismissed her. But now, in the dirt, mud, and blood of the field, she had become something else entirely, a symbol of resilience, determination, and courage. She didn't celebrate. There was no victory dance, no fist pump. She only adjusted her pack, wiped her face, and looked ahead to the next challenge. This was only the beginning. Her body ached beyond measure. Her legs screamed. Her arms shook. But her mind was clear, focused, and alive. She had faced the first real trial of endurance and leadership, and she had emerged not just unbroken, but stronger. Emily knew the story wasn't over. The challenges ahead would be tougher, crueler, and more relentless. But in that moment, lying in the mud and catching her breath, she allowed herself a quiet acknowledgement. She had carried more than anyone expected. She had bled, she had fought, and she had survived. And somewhere deep inside, a new fire ignited, one that would fuel every step of the grueling journey still to come. The air was thick with heat and tension as Emily Hartley hoisted the Marine higher onto her shoulders. His weight pressed down mercilessly, heavier than she had imagined. Every muscle in her body burned, every joint screamed, yet she didn't falter. Around her, the other recruits froze. Some whispered in disbelief, others stared wide-eyed, unsure if they should intervene. The simulated battlefield stretched out like a cruel marathon, winding through mud-laden trenches, jagged rocks, and uneven ground. Each step Emily took sent shockwaves of pain through her back and legs, yet she forced herself forward, one grueling foot in front of the other. "Keep going," she shouted to herself, though her throat was raw, one step at a time. Mason, the recruit she had helped on the grinder, fell in step beside her. His expression was a mixture of awe and anxiety. "Emily, you don't have to." "I do," she interrupted, teeth clenched. "He can't get up, and I won't let him down, not now, not ever." The first mile stretched out endlessly. The Marine groaned occasionally, the sounds raw and human, pulling at Emily's resolve. Sweat poured down her face, blurring her vision, but she refused to let it slow her. Each movement was methodical, shoulders braced, legs bent, body tight and balanced. She focused entirely on the rhythm of motion, ignoring pain, exhaustion, and doubt. A misstep sent her sliding slightly into a mud pit. She swore under her breath but quickly corrected, planting her boots firmly, gripping the Marine's torso and continuing forward. Every stumble, every moment of imbalance was a test of nerve, strategy, and sheer willpower. She had been mocked for being too small, too weak, and too fragile. Now she was proving exactly how wrong those assumptions were. Behind her, the other recruits tried to keep pace, but the terrain was merciless. Some stumbled, some swore. One fell hard into a ditch and had to be helped up by an instructor. Emily's presence, small but unwavering, became a magnet of both fear and inspiration. The instructor's whistle pierced the air periodically, sharp and unforgiving. "Forward, don't stop, every second counts." Emily adjusted her grip on the Marine, feeling the weight settle unevenly across her shoulders. Blood from her shin mingled with the mud on her boots. Her breathing was ragged, chest heaving, but she pressed on. Every step was a declaration. "I am stronger than doubt. I am stronger than pain. I am stronger than fear." The first mile was deceptively cruel. The path twisted through trenches that sapped momentum and energy. Every incline felt steeper. Every rock threatened to unbalance her. Yet she refused to pause, refusing even a microsecond of hesitation. The Marine was alive because she carried him, and she would carry him to the very end. As she rounded a bend, she felt Mason fall slightly behind. "Go on," she said, barely audible. "Keep pace if you can, I've got this." He nodded, respect and fear mingling in his expression. He had seen her push beyond human limits before, but this was different. This was raw endurance, raw heart. The landscape grew harsher. Mud became thick and sticky, slowing each step. Rocks became jagged, threatening to twist ankles. Tree roots clawed at boots. Sweat poured down Emily's face, stinging her eyes. Her hands ached from gripping the Marine. Her back screamed in pain. Every joint, every tendon, every sinew begged her to stop. But she didn't. Her mind was razor-focused. She imagined the Marine's family waiting for him. She imagined the hands of comrades she had sworn to never let down. She imagined her brother, gone too soon, and the promise she had made to herself years ago, "I will not be powerless." Step by step she moved, inch by inch. Pain and exhaustion were irrelevant. Only progress mattered. Only survival mattered. Only the Marine mattered. Halfway through the mile, the Marine's breathing grew shallow. Emily's chest tightened. Fear threatened to take hold. Not now, she thought, not here. You will not fail him. Her legs buckled slightly under the weight. She stumbled into a mud pit, nearly collapsing entirely. The Marine shifted on her shoulders. Instinctively, she tightened her grip, adjusted the angle, and forced herself upright. The pain was unbearable. Her vision blurred. Her body screamed in protest. Yet somehow she found strength. Somewhere deep, buried under layers of fear and exhaustion, a fire ignited. She drew on every ounce of discipline, every memory of training, every lesson learned in hours of silent preparation. Her legs moved again. Forward, always forward. Mason fell into step beside her once more, providing silent support. He didn't touch the Marine. He knew she wouldn't allow it, but his presence steadied her. Side by side, the two moved through the grueling terrain, Emily carrying what seemed impossible, Mason ensuring she didn't falter entirely. As they neared the final stretch of the first mile, a ridge loomed ahead. It was narrow, steep, and treacherous. Every recruit ahead had stumbled here before. Emily's shoulders burned, muscles screaming in protest, lungs gasping for air. Yet she looked up at the incline and tightened her grip. "You're almost there," Mason whispered, voice strained. Emily gritted her teeth. "Almost isn't enough. He survives or I fail. No excuses." The climb was torturous. Loose dirt crumbled beneath boots. Jagged rocks tore at flesh. Every movement required perfect coordination, balance, and focus. One misstep could send both her and the Marine tumbling down the ridge. Yet step by step, she moved upward, unwavering. At last, she crested the ridge. The first mile was complete. The Marine's breathing steadied slightly under the care of the medics who rushed forward. Emily collapsed to her knees, back trembling, sweat and mud coating every inch of her uniform. She had done it. She had carried the impossible. She had survived what no one thought she could. Around her, the other recruits stared, some in awe, some in disbelief. Mason dropped beside her, shaking his head. I don't know what to say. You're unbelievable." Emily didn't speak. She simply caught her breath, wiped the mud from her face, and looked ahead. There were more miles, more tests, more trials, and she knew deep inside that she would face them all with the same determination. Pain and exhaustion were temporary. Strength of will was permanent. She had proven that. And yet, as she gazed at the path ahead, she knew the real challenge had only just begun. The first mile had tested her body. The next would test her endurance, her mind, and the very limits of her resolve. The sun climbed higher, merciless and unforgiving, burning down on the training field. Every inch of terrain seemed designed to punish. Every rock, mud pit, and incline a calculated obstacle meant to break spirits. Emily Hartley had survived the first mile, carried the Marine through what no one thought possible, and still, her body screamed for mercy. But there was no mercy here. The instructors lined up the recruits for Mile 2, an even more grueling stretch that twisted through rocky gullies, barbed wire, and waist-deep mud pits. "You think the first mile was tough," the drill sergeant barked. "This is where the weak crack. This is where we find out who's truly relentless. Move." Emily tightened her pack straps and forced herself upright. Pain radiated from every joint. Her arms trembled. Her legs felt like lead. The cut on her shin had reopened, blood mingling with sweat and mud, forming a sticky, burning paste. Her lungs screamed, yet her mind was focused, razor-sharp. The recruits surged forward, some stumbling almost immediately. Their overconfidence from the first mile evaporated as the terrain took its toll. A massive recruit nearly fell into a mud pit, arms flailing as he cursed the instructors. Emily barely flinched, moving around him with precision, careful not to lose momentum. Her goal remained the same: forward, 1 foot, then the next, inch by inch, step by step. Half a mile in, the terrain turned treacherous. Barbed wire littered the path, forcing recruits to duck, twist, and crawl. Mud sucked at boots, making each step heavier. Emily lowered herself to her hands and knees, dragging herself through the muck while still maintaining control of the Marine's weight. Every movement tested not just strength but strategy. One miscalculation could topple both of them, sending them sliding into jagged rocks below. Behind her, Mason struggled to keep pace. His breaths came in sharp gasps, his legs trembling under fatigue. "Emily, you don't have to," he panted. "I do," she snapped, not looking back. "Keep moving, we survive together." She pushed herself forward, ignoring the burning in her shoulders, the stinging in her cuts, the fatigue clawing at every muscle. The Marine groaned, weak and fragile, and Emily's resolve hardened. He was her responsibility. She would not fail him. The midpoint of Mile 2 introduced the next challenge, a sheer incline of loose rock. The drill instructors lined it with weighted sandbags, forcing recruits to climb while dragging additional load. The incline was steep, sharp rocks slicing boots and hands. Several recruits immediately faltered, slipping and sliding back down the slope. Emily paused briefly, scanning the path. One misstep and she could lose everything. She adjusted the Marine, repositioning him slightly to balance the weight. Then, with a deep inhale, she launched herself up the slope. Her boots dug into the loose rocks, hands gripping anything stable, muscles screaming in protest. The others watched in disbelief. None expected her to make it. She was small, exhausted, bleeding, and yet she climbed with relentless precision. Step by step, inch by inch, she rose, dragging the Marine with her, refusing to acknowledge the pain. Halfway up, her energy faltered. Her legs wobbled. Every joint screamed. Sweat burned her eyes, her vision blurred at the edges. She nearly collapsed, her knees buckling under the strain. The Marine slid slightly on her back. Instinctively, she tightened her grip, dug her boots into the rock, and forced herself upright. A voice whispered behind her, "Emily, you ca." She ignored it. Every step forward was a refusal to give in. Every step forward was a promise. I will not fail. I will not stop. Reaching the top of the incline was only the beginning. The terrain beyond was a cruel mixture of mud pits, jagged stones, and tangled roots. The weight of the Marine seemed unbearable, yet Emily refused to slow. Every movement was deliberate, every motion calculated. She became a machine of endurance, pain, and determination. By the 1.5-mile mark, fatigue threatened to consume her entirely. Her arms shook uncontrollably. Her lungs burned. Her back screamed in agony. Sweat and blood coated her face and uniform, yet she pressed on, her focus unwavering. The drill instructors watched silently, impressed despite themselves. They had seen countless recruits falter here, crumble under the strain. And yet, Emily Hartley, the quiet, small, underestimated recruit, moved forward with unwavering resolve. Then came the ultimate test, a simulated ambush. Instructors fired blanks, yelling commands, creating chaos. Smoke bombs went off, mud flying into eyes. The Marine groaned on her back. Panic threatened to set in among the other recruits. Emily's mind snapped into clarity. She barked orders, precise and authoritative. "Cover the flanks, watch the path, we move forward now." The other recruits hesitated. Some froze, some faltered. Emily ignored them. She adjusted her stance, planted her boots, and carried the Marine through the chaos. Each step was deliberate, her body a testament to endurance and willpower. Halfway through the ambush, she stumbled, mud sucking at her boots, barbed wire snagging her uniform. She nearly fell. The Marine shifted dangerously. Panic threatened to take hold, but Emily steadied herself, tightened her grip, and continued. Pain and fear were irrelevant. Forward was the only direction. Mason ran alongside her, providing support but not interference. He shouted encouragement. "Almost there. You've got this." Emily gritted her teeth, refusing to respond. She couldn't afford distraction. Every movement mattered. Every misstep could mean failure for her, for the Marine, for everyone relying on them. By the 2-mile mark, Emily collapsed briefly into a mud pit, gasping for air. Her small frame shook violently, sweat and blood mixing with the dirt. She had carried the impossible further than anyone could imagine. The instructors ran forward, shouting, guiding, praising, and nodding every movement. The Marine, though exhausted, was alive, safe in Emily's care. She finally lifted herself from the pit, legs trembling, back screaming, vision blurred, but eyes burning with fierce determination. Around her, recruits looked on in awe. Some whispered. Some shook their heads. Some silently vowed never to underestimate anyone again. Emily didn't celebrate. She adjusted her pack, wiped mud from her face, and surveyed the remaining course. She was battered, broken, and bleeding, but unyielding. The drill sergeant's voice cut through the chaos. "Hartley, mile 2 complete. You've pushed further than anyone thought possible. Tomorrow we begin the endurance trials. Only the strongest survive. Only the relentless thrive. Emily's body shook, but her mind was sharp. She had carried more than her own weight. She had endured pain, chaos, and exhaustion, and she had survived. Yet in the back of her mind, she knew the hardest trials were yet to come. The first mile tested strength. The second mile tested endurance, and the days ahead would test her spirit, her mind, and the limits of her very soul. She exhaled, staring at the path ahead. The heat, the mud, the weight, they were temporary. Her resolve was permanent, and she would carry it no matter what. This was only the beginning. The real breaking point was still to come. The command tent was tense, filled with the low hum of radios, the shuffle of boots, and the quiet muttering of soldiers reviewing their mission briefs. Emily Hartley, small, wiry, and seemingly inconspicuous, had just returned from the brutal Mile 2 endurance test. Her uniform was streaked with mud, sweat, and dried blood. Every muscle ached, every joint protested, yet her eyes burned with a sharp, focused intensity. A hush fell over the room as the general entered, a figure as imposing as the mountains themselves. Every recruit straightened instinctively. His reputation preceded him, decades of experience, countless missions, and a mind sharpened by war. The weight of his presence was palpable. "Gentlemen, ladies," the general began, voice low but commanding. "We have a critical operation that requires precision, patience, and courage beyond measure. We need a sniper, one volunteer, one person willing to go where others cannot, to see what others cannot, and to act when hesitation could mean death." Murmurs rippled through the room. Many glanced at each other, hesitant, reluctant. The idea of volunteering for a sniper role carried an almost mythical weight. One wrong decision could cost lives, one miscalculation and the mission, and the soldier, would be lost forever. Emily's hands clenched at her sides. Her back ached. Her arms trembled. Her legs protested after the grueling training, but inside, a quiet fire ignited. She could feel the stare of the general cutting through the room, sweeping across the recruits like a steel blade. She didn't hesitate. One quiet motion, one small step forward, and she volunteered. The room went silent. Eyes widened. Some recruits stared in shock. Some whispered. A few smirked, assuming she couldn't possibly be the right choice, too small, too fragile, too inexperienced. The general's eyes narrowed as he studied her. For a long moment no one spoke. Then he asked, "Hartley, are you certain?" "Yes, sir," she replied, voice steady, unwavering. The general's expression didn't change. He was unreadable. He simply nodded once. "Very well. You leave at 600. Training begins immediately. You'll need to know the terrain, the wind patterns, and the target's habits. One mistake and the mission fails. One misstep and lives are lost. You understand?" Emily didn't flinch. "Yes, sir." The rest of the room was still murmuring, unable to believe the small recruit had volunteered for a role that would terrify even the most seasoned soldiers. Emily's reputation had begun to precede her, quietly, without fanfare. But here, in this moment, she would cement it. The next hours were a blur of preparation. Maps were studied, coordinates memorized, and equipment adjusted to perfection. Her sniper rifle, sleek and precise, was heavier than she expected, but her hands gripped it with confidence. Every adjustment was meticulous, every calculation deliberate. As night fell, the team moved out, stealth a requirement. Emily's eyes scanned the darkness, her body tense, muscles coiled like springs. Every sound carried meaning. A distant rustle of leaves, the crunch of boots on gravel, the faint hiss of wind. She had volunteered for this role knowing it would test her in ways no endurance course ever could. Hours passed in silence. The team advanced, carefully avoiding patrols, navigating rugged terrain, and maintaining absolute stealth. Emily felt every heartbeat, every pulse, every whisper of tension in the air. The weight of responsibility pressed down like lead. She wasn't just a soldier, she was the eyes of the operation. One decision, one shot, one mistake could unravel everything. Finally, they reached the vantage point. elevated, hidden, and perfect for observation. Emily's heart pounded, but her hands were steady. She set up her rifle, aligning the scope with meticulous care. The target, an enemy operative known for evading detection, moved through the compound below. Every motion was calculated, every habit memorized. Time seemed to stretch. Seconds became minutes. Her mind sharpened to razor focus. Sweat dripped down her face, mixing with the dust and dirt of the terrain. She felt the rifle's weight against her shoulder, the vibration of anticipation thrumming through her veins. Then a flicker in the distance, a movement that shouldn't have been there. Emily's finger tightened on the trigger. She assessed, recalculated, and held her breath. The target's pattern was predictable, but only just. One misjudgment and the opportunity would vanish. Her mind whispered, steady, patience, precision. Lives depend on this. The wind shifted. Her first instinct was to pause, to adjust for the minor drift, but she forced herself to remain calm. She had endured the impossible before, the grueling miles, the crushing weight, the chaos of live drills, and this was no different. Only the stakes were higher. Finally, the moment arrived. The shot was precise, clean, and deliberate. The target fell, the mission objective complete. Silence followed, a tense, breathless pause before the team confirmed success. Emily lowered her rifle, muscles trembling from tension rather than fatigue. She had done it. Against every expectation, against every doubt, she had performed flawlessly. The general appeared behind her, expression still stern but eyes faintly softened. "Hartley, you've exceeded expectations. Today you proved not just skill, but courage and discipline. You are unlike anyone I've seen in my career." Emily's chest heaved, body trembling, but she didn't speak. Words weren't necessary. The weight of what she had accomplished spoke louder than any praise. Mason approached quietly, eyes wide. I can't believe you did it. I've never seen anyone move like that or think like that. You're unreal." Emily allowed herself a brief smile, a flicker of pride. But she knew this was only one battle, one victory. There were more challenges ahead. Her endurance, her mind, and her resolve would be tested again and again. As the team began the extraction, Emily glanced back at the terrain she had mastered, the darkness she had navigated, the impossible she had achieved. She knew the story wasn't over. This mission was only the beginning of her legend. The silence of the night pressed around her, thick with tension and anticipation. She had volunteered for the role, faced the fear, and delivered. Yet deep inside, Emily understood something crucial. The world would always test her limits, and she would always rise to meet them. And somewhere in the shadows, the next challenge awaited, a test that would push her further than she had ever imagined. Dawn broke over the base like fire spilling across the horizon. The sky glowed pink and orange, casting long shadows across the rugged training grounds. Emily Hartley, battered but unbroken, stood at the starting line of what the instructors called the final test. Every recruit had to pass it or fail. It was the ultimate culmination of endurance, skill, courage, and sheer will. For Emily, who had already defied expectations at every turn, this was more than a challenge. It was a proving ground for everything she had become, relentless, disciplined, and fearless. The instructors were silent, their eyes sharp and calculating. "Today," the lead drill sergeant began, voice low and precise, "you will face a simulation that will test every muscle, every thought, every ounce of determination. Success is not optional. Failure has consequences." Emily's hands clenched at her sides. Her muscles ached from mile after grueling mile. Her uniform was torn and stained. Every breath came with a sting. Yet inside she felt a quiet fire, a steady rhythm of resolve. She had carried the impossible, navigated chaos, and completed a sniper mission no one thought possible. She would not falter now. The test began immediately. The recruits had to navigate a sprawling obstacle course under simulated combat conditions. Mud pits, barbed wire, rope climbs, weighted carries, and tactical maneuvers awaited. Smoke bombs, blaring alarms, and the distant wails of simulated casualties created a chaotic battlefield atmosphere. Emily dropped into the first mud pit, water and muck soaking her uniform instantly. Her arms and legs churned with effort, propelling her forward through the suffocating sludge. Her lungs burned. Her joints screamed. Every muscle threatened to give out. Yet she pressed on. Every step, every pull, every heave was precise. Above her, instructors watched. They had expected fatigue, weakness, hesitation. What they saw instead was determination incarnate. Emily Hartley moved like a force of nature, small but unstoppable, relentless in motion, precise in execution. She climbed the rope tower next. The weight of her body pulling against her arms like gravity itself was conspiring to stop her. Sweat and mud coated her hands, making her grip precarious. Halfway up, her strength faltered and she nearly slipped. Panic could have taken hold, but she steadied herself, inhaled deeply, and continued. Step by step, inch by inch, she reached the top. From there, the course twisted through simulated enemy fire. She dropped into prone positions, crawled under low barriers, and advanced with lethal precision. The fatigue that might have stopped another recruit barely registered for Emily. Every movement was guided by instinct and training, honed through months of relentless effort. Then came the final section, the weight of a life. A life-sized dummy was positioned at the center of the field, weighted to simulate a fallen comrade. Recruits had to lift it, carry it across uneven terrain, and place it safely at a designated point. But it wasn't just about physical strength. It was about control, endurance, and the ability to keep moving when exhaustion screamed to stop. Emily knelt, gripping the dummy. Her arms trembled, her shoulders burned, her legs felt like lead. Her lungs screamed for air. But she remembered every challenge she had faced, the grinder mile 1, mile 2, the sniper mission, and a quiet, unyielding voice whispered inside her, "You are capable. You are relentless. You are enough." She lifted the dummy, balancing it across her shoulders, and moved forward. The terrain was brutal, mud, rocks, and sudden inclines that threatened to topple her. Each step required absolute precision. Her muscles quaked under the weight, but her mind was clear, unwavering. Halfway across, a sudden explosion from the instructor's simulation sent mud flying into her face, and the dummy shifted dangerously. Emily's body screamed for relief, but she tightened her grip, steadied her legs, and continued. Forward motion. One step at a time. No hesitation. Recruits who had started alongside her now lagged far behind, some collapsing entirely. Mason ran nearby, offering encouragement but staying careful not to interfere. "Almost there," he shouted. Emily's chest heaved, her arms shook. Every joint threatened to fail. Every nerve screamed to quit. And yet she didn't stop. Every step was a defiance, a rejection of limits. Every movement was a promise she had made to herself and to every life she could protect. Finally, she reached the final marker. Exhausted beyond measure, she placed the dummy down gently, shoulders trembling, sweat and mud dripping from her face. She sank to her knees, chest heaving, vision blurred. Every part of her body screamed, but her spirit remained unbroken. The instructors approached slowly, some shaking their heads, others offering quiet nods of respect. The lead drill sergeant finally spoke, voice low but carrying authority. "Hartley, you have done what no one else could. You have endured, carried, executed, and survived when most would have failed. You are extraordinary." Emily exhaled, allowing herself a brief moment to feel the weight of achievement. She had faced every challenge, defied every expectation, and proven herself again and again. Yet even in triumph, she knew the journey was ongoing. There would always be another test, another mission, another impossible burden to bear. As she rose to her feet, Mason approached, his face a mixture of awe and disbelief. I can't even imagine how you did that," he said quietly. You're not just a soldier, you're something else." Emily allowed herself a faint smile, but she didn't celebrate. There was no fanfare here, only the quiet satisfaction of knowing she had given everything and still stood unbroken. The general appeared behind her, expression stern but eyes softened with rare approval. "Hartley, you have proven not just skill but courage, endurance, and heart. You have carried the impossible. You have survived the unsurvivable. And you have done it all without compromise. You are exactly what we need, exactly what every soldier should aspire to be." Emily's heart thumped, not from pride but from the raw recognition of all she had endured. She had faced every obstacle, every moment of doubt, every challenge thrown at her. She had emerged not just alive but stronger, more capable, and unyielding in spirit. And yet somewhere deep inside she knew the lesson of this final test. Limits are only what you accept them to be. Pain, exhaustion, fear, they exist but they are not chains. They are trials, opportunities to rise, to endure, to excel. As the sun climbed higher, casting its golden light across the training grounds, Emily stood at the edge of the field, sweat-streaked, mud-coated, and utterly exhausted. Behind her lay the path of relentless challenge she had conquered. Ahead, the world remained vast, uncertain, and unforgiving. And Emily Hartley knew one thing for certain: she would face it all, with courage, with resolve, with a fire that could not be extinguished.